Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about financial planning. As you can remember, I had left you last time with this investor's decision-making pyramid. Financial planning is the mid-layer of this pyramid. I have already stressed the importance of financial planning, and this is what we're going to talk about now. We're going to do this by seeing a sample financial plan. We're going to do a little bit of work on Excel and see how to build a financial plan. The approach that I use for financial planning is what I call the bucket approach. I believe in dividing your entire investment fund into various buckets. Let's look at what some of these buckets are. The first one is insurance. Insurance, although not strictly an investment, becomes a critical aspect of your financial plan because it covers you in case of those exigencies where you would suddenly need a lot of cash. Insurance can be life insurance, medical insurance, personal accident insurance, and various other forms of insurance. Life insurance becomes an extremely critical part of your financial plan, and hence I include it as the first bucket. The second bucket is what I call as a contingency fund. A contingency fund is typically the amount of money that you would need to survive for a few months in case you run out of a job, you get fired, or you just say plainly decide to take a sabbatical. It's always good to have that sort of a fund. A bare minimum would be, I would say, 6 months. A higher side amount would be 18 months. Then there are various special needs funds that you need to create out of your investment. Say you're saving up for your child's college education, or you're saving up for your kid's marriage, or you're saving up to pay a down payment on a home. These are special needs, and these special needs have a special fund that you need to create for them, for each one of them actually. The next bucket is what I called as your retirement fund. The retirement fund is in a way just another special need bucket, but it's so critical that I include it as a separate bucket. A retirement fund is something ideally you need to build right from the time you start working till the time that you plan to retire. That would probably be in your 50s, I would presume. The last one is what I call as your wealth. Now, wealth is outside of all of these buckets because wealth is typically the amount of money that you have which you would never need to spend, something which you would give away to your children as an inheritance. Let's look at it through a sample financial plan. Here's my friend Shiv. He's a 35-year-old IT professional, earns about rupees 15 lakhs a year after tax. He has a wife who also earns 5 lakhs a year, so that makes their total family income to 20 lakhs. His wife spends a lot more though. Shiv's kids, he has 2 kids which go to an expensive private school. And Shiv's parents. His parents are partially dependent on him. That would be the case, I believe, in modern times when even retired people have a substantial amount of savings. Now, let's try and construct Shiv's financial plan. I've got this Excel sheet open here in which I have basically made a format. Let's try and put in the details. The left hand side of this sheet is basically what I call the income statement. The right hand side is what I call the balance sheet. Let's get familiar with these. Shiv's income, as I mentioned, was rupees 15 lakhs per annum. This was after tax. His wife's salary is 5 lakhs. Mind you, here I'm only mentioning the earned income and not their investment income, because the investment income that comes here will be a derivative of these investment assets. Okay. Let's try and fill in the assets. Shiv has an investment portfolio of 50 lakhs. His wife has an investment portfolio of 20. Shiv's parents, who are retired, they have their own retirement corpus, which is 1.5 crores. Yeah. So the total investment portfolio of the family is 2.2 crores. Shiv and his wife earn, let's assume, a return of around 10% on their investments. Because we're assuming a hybrid of debt and equity kind of investments. Shiv's parents earn slightly lower because most of their investments would be in the form of fixed maturity debt products. Let's assume that they earn 8%. 8. So, the total family income comes to 39 lakhs. Now, let's look at their expenses. Shiv has a home loan for rupees 80 lakhs. Shiv pays an EMI on this home loan, which comes to around 10 lakhs. This is a per annum figure. Now, Shiv's household expenses are rupees 25,000 a month. This would amount to 3 lakhs a year. His personal expenses are rupees 1 lakh. His wife's personal expenses are 2 lakhs. Shiv's kids go to school, and an expensive one, so their expenses would be around 2 lakhs. Shiv's parents are retired. They spend somewhere around 2 lakhs every year. Now this is an expense head which most of us often miss. It's called capital expenses. This would basically mean something you want to buy, say a new laptop or a new TV set. I would factor something like, say, 1,50,000 every year for this. No, it's 1,50,000. Right. So this is what I call as the family's non-discretionary expenses. Now, non-discretionary expenses are the expenses that you incur to sustain your current lifestyle. Over and above this, you would say travel, go on a holiday, buy jewelry, things like this, which I would call as discretionary expenses. Expenses which you can cut down on while still living your current lifestyle. Shiv's family holidays once in a year, and I would budget a figure of around 4 lakhs for this. Buying jewelry, maybe 1 lakh. So total non-discretionary expenses come to rupees 5 lakhs. After this, Shiv has a surplus left over for investing. Let's see what that amount comes to. Around 12.5 lakhs is what Shiv has left over for investing. This is how you construct a summary of your finances. Now, let's look at the various buckets for Shiv. The first bucket is called an insurance bucket. Now, the only form of insurance that I'm calculating here is life insurance. Within life insurance, I always recommend going for a term plan. A term plan is what basically covers only the eventuality of death. It does not cover any other kind of investments, or you're not going to get your money back basically. I'm not really including health insurance in these calculations because it's rather easy to calculate how much health insurance you need. Now let's calculate how much of a life insurance term plan cover Shiv needs. Now remember, this is basically us covering the eventuality of Shiv's death. Let's plot the numbers. Monthly non-discretionary expenses. It's 21,50,000. Now, I deduct the home loan EMI out of this because I'm gonna add the entire home loan amount later. So, in case of Shiv's death, the entire home loan would get repaid in one shot rather than his family having to take the burden of paying the EMI. Shiv's personal expenses, again, we need to deduct because we're covering the eventuality of his death. So, once we deduct these two, what we get is the base expenses at current lifestyle for Shiv's family in his absence. That would be 10,50,000. Now, his wife is also earning, so I deduct his wife's salary out of this. So what we get now is the expenses that need to be covered by Shiv's investment portfolio, and that is rupees 5.5 lakhs a year. Expected return on investments is the rate of interest that one would expect to earn on his investment portfolio, and in this case we would assume only a debt investment portfolio and take a 8% return. Now remember, these expenses are as of today. As time goes by, inflation increases, and hence you need to adjust for that inflation. Now I'm assuming inflation of 4%, and this gives me a net return on investments of 4%, which means that after accounting for inflation, I would end up earning a 4% return on my investment portfolio. If I am earning a 4% return, and I have to earn 5.5 lakhs on my portfolio, how much would I require as an investment portfolio? And there's the amount. It's 1,37,50,000. To this, I also need to add what I call as the present value of future planned expenses. This is nothing but the large expenses that one would need in the future, such as Shiv's children's education or their marriage, things of those lines. I'm not adding it right now because this will come from my special needs funds sheet, this sheet. So we'll add that later. Now out of this, I want to deduct Shiv's current investment portfolio. Let's see, what is his current investment portfolio? So Shiv plus his wife's current investment portfolio is rupees 70 lakhs. So let's deduct 70 lakhs out of this. And hence we get insurance required for the family is 67,50,000. You can also deduct your parents' investment portfolio, but I'm just not doing that right now, to just leave that aside with them. I would not want to use Shiv's parents' investment portfolio to fund his family's expenses in his absence. Now, to this, I would like to add the home loan outstanding amount that I was talking about, and that is 80 lakh rupees. This is because I wouldn't want Shiv's family to take the burden of paying a home loan in his absence. So these two things now give me a total insurance requirement of 1,47,50,000. You can round that off and take an insurance policy of 1.5 crores. Now that we've seen insurance, let's look at what Shiv's contingency plan looks like. Remember, contingency plan is a plan for covering a period of life when you are, say, out of a job. Shiv's non-discretionary monthly expense is 21,50,000. Let's try and, this is an annual expense, not a monthly expense. We need 18 months coverage to be on a really safe side, which means my total fund requirement will be this into 1.5 years, which gives me 32,25,000. Now, allocation of investment fund. Now, Shiv's total investment fund, including his parents, is 2 crores 20 lakhs. The reason why I'm also including his parents' investment is because I'm including their expenses out here on the left hand side. Allocation to contingency fund would be 32 lakh 25,000. The balance left over for Shiv would be 1 crore 87 lakh 75,000. This is the balance that's left over for all my other needs. Now let's look at the special needs funds. Special needs funds are meant for specific items. In case of Shiv, he would want to buy a bigger house at some point. He has to save for his college education of his children and for his children's marriage. The amount that he is expecting out here is 50 lakhs. Remember, he owns a home right now, so he would only be moving from his current house to a bigger house. So it's only the incremental amount that I'm calculating. He has 2 kids. He would like to give them the best of education, and he is factoring 1 crore for their college education, and for their marriage he is factoring an amount of, again, 1 crore. Oops. Yeah. He plans to buy a bigger house 5 years from now. His children's college education would need to arise 10 years from now, and his children's marriage would be, say, 20 years from now. Now, so these are the 3 buckets, and these are the maturity of the 3 buckets. Now, the way we look at these buckets is that the time when you start saving up in your bucket, you can have a larger portion in equity, but as the maturity date of that bucket nears, you should keep moving more and more of fund in that bucket into debt. So a simple schedule that I've drawn up out here is that in the last 5 years before maturity, Shiv would have 100% of that bucket in debt, 0 in equity. The 5 years prior to that would be 75% debt, 25% equity. The 5 years before that would be 50% debt, 50% equity, and so on. Now, his buying a house is a 5-year thing for him, and hence most of what he would have in this case is debt. So, if Shiv wants to save up over a 5-year period an amount of 50 lakhs, how much would he need to invest? Now, let's say that Shiv plans to invest an amount of 7 lakhs every year in this. So, the interest that he would earn on this would be the fund value into 8%, because we are assuming an 8% return on a debt investment. The fund value would be this plus this plus this in year 1. Now, if you can just pull this down, you would see that by the end of year 5, Shiv would have a fund of 41 lakhs. Now, you can just iterate this a little bit and see what amount would actually suffice. Let's say this is 8 lakhs instead of 7. There you go. 46 lakhs 93,000. Maybe 8.5 might do. And there you go. In 5 years, Shiv will be able to accumulate somewhere around 50 lakh rupees. You can follow the same process to look at your children's college education fund or your marriage fund. It goes over a longer period. You can keep adding different amounts of money every year based on how much surplus you have available. And the interest that you mention in this column, you can take it from this weighted average return column. So in the last 5 years, you might earn 8%. The previous 5 would be 9%. The previous 5 would be 10%, because you would have a larger portion in equity. This is how you build your special needs fund buckets. Now, coming on to the retirement fund. A retirement fund is nothing but another special needs fund. But you really need to get this one right. You need to calculate how much money you will need at the time of retirement. So let's go back now to Shiv's non-discretionary expenses, 21,50,000. Now I'm deducting his kids' expenses out of this because Shiv really would not have to fund his kids. By the time he's retired, they would be earning themselves. I'm also deducting his parents' expenses because, again, by the time Shiv retires, his parents would either be extremely old or probably no longer there. So kids' expenses and parents' expenses are what go out. What I would like to add here is Shiv's own discretionary expenses, because he too would want to spend some amount of money on traveling, etc., even after he's retired. So I'm adding an amount of 3 lakhs out here. And this would again be only for Shiv and his wife and not his entire family as of now. So the total expenses at current price would be 20,50,000. Now, I need to account for inflation because this is the amount of money that Shiv would spend as of today. But he's going to retire, say, 25 years from now. So there's going to be inflation over that period, and his future income at that point, his future expenses at that point would be much higher. Let's assume an inflation of 4% per annum. He has 25 years to retirement. Now, here is a formula you can use to account for future growth of expenses. You take your current expenses, you multiply that 1 plus your projected annual inflation raised to the number of years, that's 25 years, and there we get, it's this amount, 54,64,000 is what Shiv would need to spend in future prices. Now, expected return on investments would be the same as we have calculated in our insurance computation sheet. So I get a net return of 4% on my investments. That is what I would earn. Now, in order to cover this, Shiv thus effectively needs a retirement fund of, it's a huge amount. What's this? 13 crore 66 lakhs. Now don't be afraid by this number, because this number is, if I am in 2015 right now, 25 years from now, I'm talking about what? 2040. So this might not be that big a number in 2040. Now let's see how Shiv will build up 13 crore 66 lakhs. What is his investment fund valued at today? Let's take his total investments, 2 crores 20 lakhs. I'm including his parents' investments because, at some point he's going to inherit it. So, or at least I would assume so. 2 crores 20 lakhs is his investments. Addition to this investment, say on an average every year, Shiv is able to add an amount of let's say 5 lakhs. Expected return. Now, in this initial stage, he would be earning a return of at least 12%. So, first 5 years 12%. Next 5 would be 11%. Then 10%. Right. So now let's try and draw up what Shiv is likely to end up with if he invests 5 lakhs every year. This retirement fund. This is fund value. Add current year's addition and add to that your expected return in your investments. Now let's see, let's take 5 lakhs addition every year till the time he's 60. Expected return I'll plot in this column, and the fund value will grow thus. He's ending up with 29 crores 29 lakhs at this rate of return if he keeps investing 5 lakhs every year. You might think these numbers are humongous, but they're not. To be honest, this is the value of compounding. This is how one can invest and make money. This is basically how you compute a person's personal financial plan. It's not really a very scientific process. It involves a lot of iterations and permutations and combinations, but this basically gives you, I hope, a decent idea of how this process works. Thank you.